This is Kyrie Irving, one of the most exciting players in the NBA. He's universally viewed as the most skilled player in NBA history. He's one of one. Since 1946, over 5,000 players have made it to the NBA, and they've come from 94 different countries and territories. Generations of talent, different eras, different styles. And still, Kyrie's name sits at the top when it comes to skill. But what does that really mean? Is it his insane handle?
Oh my goodness, and Kyrie, what a handle.
The way he finishes at the rim with either hand?
And darting into spectacular!
The footwork?
Oh my, that was pretty.
Or is skill less obvious? Like decision making, reading the floor, knowing how to control a game. Because once you start including things like IQ and feel for the game, how do you even measure that? Is a no-look pass more skilled than knowing when not to pass at all? Is shooting off the dribble harder than knowing how to move without the ball and get open? Some parts of skill you can see. They're flashy. They make the highlight reel. Use case number 1, James Harden's side step back 3. Back in his Houston days, it wasn't just for show. That move was the offense. During the 2018-2019 season, Harden averaged over 13 three-point attempts per game, and many of them were off the dribble step backs. He wasn't just chucking shots though. He made them at a 36.8% clip, off the dribble with defenders draped all over him. For context, league average that year from 3 was about 35.5%. A lot of those were catch and shoot looks. Harden was creating his own space, often one-on-one, and still hitting at an above average rate. It was unguardable. Harden gave us one of the most impressive offensive seasons in NBA history. He was All-NBA first team, and he was second in MVP voting. A good argument could be made that he should have gone back-to-back. As effective as Harden's step back was, the same could be said for Kevin Durant's mid-range pull-up. It's one of the smoothest, most natural-looking shots we've ever seen. But it's not just pretty, it's deadly. In the 2020-21 season with the Nets, KD hit around 51% of his mid-range shots on solid volume. During that season, the league average for shots between 10 to 16 feet was around 44%. Durant basically cleared the entire league, particularly in the most important time of the year. Against the Bucks with Kyrie injured and Harden playing hurt, KD was the only option. What did we see? A 7-footer with the guard's handle, scoring from everywhere on the floor. Why was Durant's time with the Nets so important? Because even in a super small sample size, we saw him dominate the competition in a manner we hadn't really seen before. Durant's skill has always been top 2, at worst, top 3 in the league. But against the Bucks, he felt inevitable.
This day extracts a heavy toll.
He had 49 points game 5 and 48 points in game 7. Milwaukee had Giannis, Drew, and Middleton, all healthy, and they were holding on for dear life. KD was unstoppable that series. Thing is, we've seen the same inevitability from someone who's often viewed as less skilled, Shaquille O'Neal. In his prime, Shaq didn't just beat you, he broke your game plan. He was a problem as soon as he arrived in the league, and he had 14 straight seasons of scoring at least 20 points per game. But let's jump to peak Shaq. 29.7 points, 13.6 boards, and 3 blocks per game on 57.4% shooting. He led the league in scoring, won a championship, and took home finals MVP. Best player in the league by a mile, and no other big could look him in the eye. He was sealing you deep, bullying double teams, and dunking through defenders like they weren't even there. That's why Shaq is called the most dominant force in NBA history. But rarely is he called the most skilled. And that's where this whole conversation gets interesting. Because when someone like Kyrie does a reverse layup on the other side of the rim, that's skill. But when Shaq is in the post, drop steps, pump fakes, and bodies 2 grown men out the way before scoring, it's just called power or athleticism. But isn't that kind of a skill too? The ability to time the seal, read the defense, feel the pressure, get the defender off balance with pump fakes, and finish through contact. It's just not as flashy. But just because it doesn't look smooth doesn't mean it's not incredibly difficult. Shaq had soft touch on his back shoulder fade, great footwork for his size, quick reactions, and patience in the post. So maybe the problem isn't that Shaq wasn't skilled. Maybe the problem is that we only recognize skill when it looks a certain way. I wanted to see which skills stick out to random fans. So I turned to the most trusted basketball think tank on the internet, Reddit. And honestly, the first Redditor I came across, shout out to Max Affectionate 951, got pretty detailed. They listed the usual stuff: dribbling, shooting, passing, finishing, defense, rebounding. But then they took it a step further: spot-up shooting, off-ball movement, pick-and-roll ball handling, post passing, rim protection, post defense, nail and help man defense, driving downhill, screener passing, roamer help man defense, cutting, motor. It was a lot. Obviously, no one in history has had all of that. It's impossible. So the real question becomes, which of those skills actually matter the most? Which ones actually move the needle the most for an individual? If I were to pick one, my gut says shooting.
Harper's on Miller. McKee gets it in the middle for the win.
Probably the biggest floor raiser in basketball that increases exponentially the farther out you can shoot. That being the case, someone like Steph Curry should be the most valuable player in the league, right? I mean, he's honestly the greatest shooter we've ever seen. But what's the best way to measure that? I started pulling some data from NBA.com and going through their metrics. I ended up using PIE. That's player impact estimate. Basically, it's the NBA's all-in-one stat that tries to answer a simple question: how much did this guy help his team win? It looks at scoring, rebounding, assists, turnovers, efficiency, all of it. For context, Kobe's PIE was 50.4 in his 81-point game. Jordan had a 40.3 PIE in Game 4 of the '93 NBA Finals, where he dropped 55 on the Suns. So yeah, high PIE usually means big impact. In this test, I looked at players who averaged at least 20 points per game during the 2024-25 season and sorted them by their PIE. Here's the twist: Steph made the top 20, but he wasn't top 5, not even top 10. And above him, guys like Zion Williamson, Paolo Banchero, Anthony Davis. None of them are shooters anywhere close to Steph's level, but they're still producing at an elite rate. How? By living at the rim, finishing through contact, drawing fouls, cleaning up misses. The stuff that always doesn't get called skill the way a 28-foot step back does. But that kind of scoring can be just as effective, sometimes even more reliable, because it's high percentage offense. Which brings us to one of the most debated topics in basketball: skill and efficiency. There's been a battle brewing in the basketball community for years now, a line drawn between two camps. On one side, you've got the bad talk crew, the pure hoopers, the shot creators, the skill purists. On the other side, the calculator gang, the ones who live by true shooting percentage, value per possession, and advanced metrics. And here's the thing: the skill side sees the efficient side as boring, robotic, limited, too obsessed with the numbers. Meanwhile, the stat guys view the other side as too inefficient. Ironically enough, both sides have an argument. On one side, we demand efficiency. We want players to take the best shots, the smartest shots, because that's how you win over the course of 48 minutes. But on the other end, we forget that those inefficient shots are often the very ones that keep teams alive when the defense takes everything else away. This isn't about dismissing skill. It's about expanding what we consider skill to be. Maybe elite shot selection is a skill. Maybe efficiency isn't separate from skill at all. It's actually a part of it. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of skill if it doesn't lead to better results? And in basketball, the most immediate and obvious result, especially to fans, is scoring. That's what ultimately determines games. That's what we react to. And more often than not, it becomes the basis for how we judge a player's ability. So let's dig a little deeper. Hey guys, thanks for watching this far. I put a lot of time and effort into these videos, so if you're enjoying it, a like and a comment would mean a lot. All right, back to the video. These dots represent points per game averages for one of the greatest players the NBA has ever seen. It's clear that this player has been adding to his game every offseason. His production keeps climbing year after year. Based on the numbers alone, you'd have no doubt he's highly skilled. If you already know who I'm talking about, drop his name in the comments. Here's a hint. He's a 2-time MVP. Honestly, I've basically given away who it is. Yes, I'm talking about the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's a walking mismatch at 6'11" with a 7'3" wingspan. Even though he's dominant, there's a constant idea in parts of the basketball community that Giannis isn't skilled. That his game is just built with physical tools rather than refined technique. And to be fair, there are weaknesses in Giannis's game. He isn't going to dazzle you with a deep bag of counters like James Harden. He's not a pull-up three-point sniper like Clay. His free throw shooting, still inconsistent. All that said, you don't average 26 plus for 8 straight seasons just being big and athletic. And when you evaluate someone like Giannis, you have to view his skill set through the lens of what we typically expect from a traditional big. By that standard, a skill like his handle is, dare I say, elite. But I wouldn't expect you to take my word for it. So let's look at the footage.
Good challenge, good contest there from Pat Connaughton. Closeout. Giannis on the move, looking for some pass break points.
He's doing a great job. Giannis attacking on the other side.
I think it's obvious, but critics will say, but he still can't shoot. Let's be clear. We may never associate the word sniper with Giannis, but people are ignoring the progress too. The mid-range shot is one of the most discussed topics in hoops. Analytics departments call it the least efficient shot in basketball. Too far from the rim for a high percentage finish and not worth the extra point like a 3. But here's the irony. Some of the most effective players in the league live by it. Kevin Durant primarily built his scoring identity off that space. Devin Booker doesn't just shoot mid-range jumpers, he hunts them. Kyrie's mid-range game in the 2016 finals saved the Cavs on numerous offensive possessions. And then there's DeMar DeRozan, mid-range master. For these guys, the mid-range isn't a bad shot, it's a weapon. A weapon that Giannis deploys at a fairly consistent rate. More consistent than wings like LeBron James, Klay Thompson, and Luka Doncic. So, when it comes to scoring, I think we can all agree Giannis is supremely skilled, even if it looks different from a player like Kevin Durant. Which brings us to the final question. Not just who's better, but how do we even define better when both players are elite in opposite ways? Is it dominance or versatility? Eye test or results? That's where things get tricky and where bias usually creeps in. Because most people, whether they admit it or not, default to team success or individual accolades. Team success is usually low-hanging fruit because nothing is more obvious than wins and losses. And the most immediate indicator of that success is often championships. If we're simply looking at hardware, we'd probably go KD, Shaq, and then Steph. But going that route is almost meaningless because it doesn't include context. To this day, critics still diminish the value of Kevin Durant's championships because they came after he joined one of the greatest teams of all time, alongside at worst the third best player in the league. Now, contrast that with Giannis, who won his only ring with the team that drafted him as the undisputed best player on the roster. If we're going to rate championships based on who stayed and who left, then Giannis's single ring arguably holds more weight than Durant's 2. But just saying that sounds crazy. 1 ring outweighing 2? But that's a sentiment many fans actually share. There's a deep admiration for stars who win where they were drafted. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Dwayne Wade. Jordan's rings in particular hold a lot of value for people because they believe the grind he had was so tough. He had to battle through the Celtics dynasty, full of Hall of Famers, while the Bulls weren't even trying to win games. Then came the Pistons, who literally created the Jordan rules to punish him for being too great. So he bulked up, took the hits, and eventually beat Detroit. He sacrificed his ISO scoring and embraced the triangle offense to maximize his teammates. And in return, he won 3 straight twice. His journey has become the gold standard for greatness. And on the flip side, fans assign an asterisk for players who left their original teams to win elsewhere. Guys like LeBron James and Kevin Durant. Imagine how different the narrative would be if LeBron had won his first title in Cleveland, or if KD had done it in OKC. Not the same path as MJ, but how much do we tax KD and ignore the show he put on during those championship runs just because they happened in Golden State? Seriously, That 2016-27 run was all-time level dominance. Now, compare that to Giannis' 2021 finals run. Suddenly, you've got a real debate about who was more impactful. If you're in the Giannis camp, you'll say, KD played with Steph, a top 75 player, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Fair. But if you're on Team KD, you could argue that the competition he faced was undeniably better than what Giannis faced. Durant went head-to-head with LeBron James, the best player in the world, alongside Kyrie Irving, the most skilled player ever, and a perennial all-star in Kevin Love. Both arguments have standing, which is why ring counting alone doesn't tell the full story of either player's greatness. So, what about individual accolades? We'll use Shaq and Hakeem for this one. Two of the greatest big men the game has ever seen, and both proved it when it mattered most. When it comes to accolades, there's a fight. Shaq has more finals MVPs, while they each have one regular season MVP. Shaq won 2 scoring titles, while Hakeem picked up 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Shaq edges Hakeem in All-Star appearances and All-NBA selections, while Hakeem led the league in blocks and rebounds multiple times. So who do you pick? It's wild when you think about it. Kobe Bryant, a 5-time champion, often gets downplayed for being the Robin to Shaq's Batman during their first 3 titles. He was just 22 years old, and his greatness gets minimized because he wasn't the leading guy. But here's the truth. There's never been a 22-year-old in NBA history who could have made prime Shaq take a back seat. Not Tim Duncan, not LeBron James, not Magic Johnson, not even Michael Jordan. In that era, Shaq was going to be the main guy no matter who he played with. If we add all that context, then we'd have to rank Shaq over Hakeem, right? Well, not exactly. Defense is one of the most undervalued aspects in basketball. As the game has become more and more fast-paced, with high-scoring offenses, the idea of defense feels like a concept the game no longer needs, but it's still hugely important. Look no further than the reigning champions. The Thunder had the best defense in the regular season by far. They gave up 2.5 fewer points per 100 possessions than the next best team, the Orlando Magic, the second largest gap between the 2 top defenses in the last 29 years. Then in the playoffs, they had the largest turnover differential in NBA history, blowing the previous record holder out the water. Given that defense still wins championships, Hakeem Olajuwon has to climb the impact meter. He's already in rare company, one of only 3 players in NBA history to win both Defensive Player of the Year and MVP in the same season. And that two-way ability, it was on full display in the 95 playoffs. This is David Robinson, another all-time top 75 center. Before Tim Duncan arrived in San Antonio, it was all about the Admiral. The 94-95 season was supposed to be his redemption campaign. Ironically enough, the year before, he finished second in MVP voting to Hakeem, despite having arguably a stronger individual season. You know how, as fans, we sometimes get robbed of a superstar matchup? The debate builds all season over who's better. We imagine the showdown in the playoffs, and then it never happens. That wasn't the case in the 95 Western Conference Finals. If there was ever a series where the question, who's better, was asked and definitively answered, this was it. That series, Hakeem solidified what many had already thought, that he was the premier big in the NBA. It can't be understated the work Hakeem did defensively, holding Robinson under 50% from the field. To make matters worse, Robinson had no chance guarding Hakeem. Cherry on top is that in the next round, Hakeem secured his second ring by taking out Shaq's Orlando Magic. Now, to be fair, this wasn't prime Shaq. That context matters. But anyways, we have Shaq putting up otherworldly numbers on his way to 3 Finals MVPs, battling against guys like Rick Smits, Dikembe Mutombo, and Tom McCollum. Meanwhile, Hakeem dominated in MVP on his way to the finals, Baby Shaq, and Patrick Ewing. Is there really a clear answer on who had greater impact? Honestly, you could argue it either way, and that's exactly what makes basketball so interesting. The game's never static. It's always changing, shifting what we value. Talk to one person, and they'll tell you today's NBA is soft. All spacing and jump shots instead of grit and post play. Talk to someone else and they'll argue it's never been tougher. The speed, the versatility, the skill you need now is on another level. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Players like Shaq and Hakeem, KD and Giannis, Steph and Kyrie, they force us to wrestle with questions we can't really settle. But maybe that's the beauty of it all. There's no single answer. Basketball is too dynamic. It's an evolving conversation shaped by every generation, every style, every debate. And the fact that we can't fully agree, that's what keeps the game alive. Well, I appreciate you guys for watching the video. If you want more content like this, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'd really appreciate it.